It's lovely to be here. And in Melbourne, I was just saying to Jenny and Ruth, I walked here, you know, with the sort of sun in the front, blue sky, and Jenny's umbrella up, and hail pinging on the umbrella. And I thought, that's Melbourne. That's Melbourne. Like 4 seasons in the same moment. We used to say Melbourne 4 seasons in one day, but not in the same moment. Anyway, that's fine. It makes up for it because the Lenten roses and the camellias on the way here are spectacular. So, you know, there is compensation for your shit weather. Okay, so I've been reading up on what you've been doing, and obviously I've been catching up with a few of you online with that stonker of a thing with the bill. Was fantastic. That was really impressive, wasn't it? Are you impressed with yourselves? Seriously, be impressed with yourselves, because I was looking at that thinking, if we gave that to practitioners, they'd go, holy. You know, that's an impressive task that you undertook, which, you know, that sets you up for life, doesn't it, really? I mean, not the whole of life, but, you know, that ability to have that kind of inquiry and, you know, reflect and do and reflect again and do again at that level is really, that's quite something. So I hope you have an appreciation of, did you see it, Ruth? Aren't you? Yeah. That will look good on the transcripts, aren't you? Yeah. It's great. You know, because Zoran wrote it, and I looked at it and went, oh crap, and but you just did it. Just rose to the challenge. So, you know, and whatever your process was in dealing with that challenge, you know, we can talk about later. But anyway, so for this 2 weeks, it's quite a structured. The first week is quite structured, and then the next week is less so. So, and really, obviously, you're in your third year, and it's the middle of your third year. So the overall theme is becoming a Feldenkrais practitioner, as in giving FIs. So you're FI giver, a giver of FIs. So if we situate that in the overall program, and we had a lovely weekend reflecting on the learning objectives for the program and looking back at what we thought would be, you know, the essentials to be in this program, and have we delivered on that, etc. And that was a really, really great process. And when we'd sort of done an interim thing. When was that? Well, a year ago. And I'd completely forgotten that we did this, but we'd come up with the overall sort of learning objectives that kind of summarise the program in terms of what we would hope for, which otherwise learning objectives or outcomes, if you like. And Zoran's got a nice definition of what's the sort of objective of the training program. And this is, you can have your own, don't feel compelled to have these, but this is to confidently and competently practice the Feldenkrais method as developed by Moshe Feldenkrais, that's kind of what we've promised to facilitate for you to develop, that confidence and competence. And so that's practicing the Feldenkrais method, you know, and it's very explicitly not there about what does that practice mean for you, because that is up to you. And then breaking that down into the 3 years. So year 1, and my writing hasn't got any better, so it's unlikely to, that says embodied learner. So in the first year, if you think back, and I don't know what's that experience like of thinking back to year 1, I can't remember whether you're in this room or upstairs, that that was kind of the, and it's not to say that all the other things that I talk about aren't present in the first year. It's a question of waiting. So the waiting of the first year is about becoming an embodied learner, and that is about learning how to sense yourself, and it's about that process of being able to go inward and sense yourself, reflect on yourself, and then what that means in terms of your ability to act. So there's a whole lot of stuff happening around there, but essentially, it's you, and it's, and it's somewhat egocentric, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but it's all about you in that first year, whether you felt like that or not. But it is. Does that make sense? You're getting to know yourself. And as you go, and so you're getting to know yourself, and it's the embodied learning, and then you're getting to know yourself in a kind of environment that's giving you feedback. So you're starting to broaden that you're not a sole person, sitting on your own with no context and no environment. So you're starting to, talk about the environment, experience the environment, and it's an experiential way, like gravity, experiencing gravity. What does it actually mean to you, etc., etc. So there's that kind of flavour. There's you, and then there's the context of the ecology that you're in the first year. Now in the second year, we'd call that the embodied teacher. So that is obviously then the focus shifts, and there's more weighting on you becoming aware of there are other people who can learn to sense, can learn this, and that you can actually be the teacher of this. Yep. So it's and I'm summarizing it a lot, but there's you and your little environment, but then you realize that there are lots of other folk, and there is an environment that you can create, and that actually they can probably overlap. But it's that sort of thing, is that then you can actually take this and offer this experience to groups of people. Does that make sense? Tick. Done. Been there, done that. Got the t-shirt. I'm an ATM teacher, or whatever. Now this year, year 3, and you're halfway through it. And if you can't read that, that says the embodied practitioner. And that is kind of a unique thing where there's you, and then there's others, and then there's an other, and there is this kind of shared learning environment. And that's the FI kind of practice. So it's not like here, you're not, maybe that's not exactly the right way to draw it, but because maybe your environment and their environment overlap a little bit. But in this, it's this kind of closer, more intimate system that you're creating. And of course, and there's this. Now, in here, you're getting influences, and there's a little bit of influence back. Here, you're doing a lot of influence there with a little bit of influence back, whatever. Here, it's a very much the two-way relationship as well. And in the context of both of you, where you come from, who you are, what you do, what you think, what you feel, what you sense, etc. So that's, I think, a pretty simple way of seeing where you are. Is that where you feel like you are on the journey? The journey, I made it sound like reality TV. This is the embodied reality TV show. Any comments about that? Have you become quiet? Is this an evolutionary thing, or? You feel like you're being inducted into a little secret club. I'll just repeat it for the yeah. Oh.
Like induction into this little land that we didn't inhabit before.
Oh, is that good or bad? Or it's just how it is? It's good. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good. And so you feel welcomed.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's nice. That's nice to know that our community's welcoming.
Well, we're
Yeah. Well, you know, it's not a guarantee sometimes, is it? Because I don't know where you're all from. You're from Sydney.
to the April training. So
Yep.
that was nice. We kind of
Yep.
got a little bit there, and then
Yeah.
I think for me, just going to Zoran's study groups and meeting some of the other practitioners and just slowly kind of,
Yeah.
I can't quite explain it, but yeah.
Yeah.
It just occurred to me the other day that that's what it feels like. There's these little secrets that they're letting out and we're, telling us about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, it's not a cult. However,
there's a however.
as you can see, over the weekend, Susan, Zoran and I have been talking about our educational process and about clarifying and writing down. Yes, it's adapting to all kinds of environments in which we find ourselves.
Yeah.
That whilst we're putting energy into getting clearer about what are we teaching, what are we expecting you to learn, how do you know what you're supposed to learn, all those sorts of things, we are also equally clear that there is something about hanging out with the Feldenkrais community and absorbing it in a much more intangible way that is part of the process. That it is a way of thinking, a way of being, a way of interacting with each other and the world and with ourselves, that you have to kind of catch rather than study it out of a book or have it explained to you. So it's delightful that you're sensing that there is something that you now belong to.
One day, they were talking just around the table at lunch about, mentoring. Have you got, and he said to me, he looked at me, he said, well, have you asked Elsa for help? And I was like, no. He said, well, ask her. So, and so that's something I'm not good at, but she jumped at it. So it's been great. So we've done a couple of things with her now.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then going to Zoran's study groups and then meeting some of the other practitioners and just hearing other people's sort of journeys and thoughts and different things has been really good.
So, because obviously we're kind of future pacing a little bit too about where you're heading. So, here's where we are in the middle of this. But what you are, the next stage obviously is this embodied community thing. So that speaks really, really well to what you're talking about. And this looks like a little tiny diagram now because my spatial organisation wasn't good. But, there's you and you've got your little thing and then you've got your little groups with lots of people in them and then you've got your FI stuff and you're in this kind of big embodied community of what that looks like, practitioners and students and all that sort of stuff. So this is where you can start imagining that you're heading and you're already getting a taste of it in Sydney and hopefully people are having that experience in Melbourne, Brisbane, I don't know, Adelaide. I'm looking at Jane. Jane goes to every ATM class in Adelaide, so everybody. Yeah. So
I did talk to Zoran when I saw him in Newcastle at Georgie's place, and I said to him I'd really like to see the group get together like at least once a year.
Yeah.
That we do our own little thing, so we keep that connection of our little group.
Yeah. There is something to be said about we're all of the one lineage, if you like, but there's something to be said about this, your own little tribe. Yeah. Ruth and Zoran and I come from the same litter. And it doesn't mean to say that we don't get on really well with Jenny. We do, litters. But there is there is just something about that. Yep. So you only have to say half the joke, don't you? Because you can say, I remember when Susan went and then you don't have to say anymore because you'll all go, ah, that was so funny, because you've got that shared experience. Whereas if someone else is there, you have to, yeah, so that's a great idea. I think that's a really good idea.
Philip is already on it.
Philip is onto it.
Yeah, she's got it.
Yeah.
I'm going to make it work.
Yeah, because it takes energy to do that, because the training provides the energy and the impetus to bring you together. When the training per se isn't the impetus, you have to find that group impetus to come together. And when there's a lot of competing things that want to pull you apart, but I do. My sense is that Jenny's already mentioned that what we're really interested in is how do you get this kind of cohesion? How does this happen? And it happens, we think, because the majority of the learning is done. It's not the majority. We've got this face-to-face immersion that we think is really important, that you're actually physically together. But it's not done like Ruth and Zoran and I had. I don't know how many segments you had in your training. We just had 2 4-week segments each year. So there's a lot of gap in between. 4 weeks, full on, drowning, help. And then 5 months of nothing. And then, now it need not have been nothing, because that could have been up to us to generate some activities. And probably some people did. Certainly in Adelaide, we never did. We just went back into our thingies. And then the next 4 weeks. And that, it worked, because here we still are, somewhat successful practitioners. So it wasn't, I'm not saying that didn't work, but there's something about the ongoing contact that you have with each other in between that we are assuming is having an influence on the connectivity between you, because you're actually practicing the connectivity in that sense. So look, this is, as you know, programs have been evolving. I probably didn't need to go here, but we're really interested in evaluating what we've been doing with you guys. You're not guinea pigs, we're not testing stuff on you. What we're doing is sound and reasonable. But we are really interested in evaluating how you feel this process is. So I'm just putting it out there, and we can do that. It would be good to have a conversation about how we do that. We've got our kind of, the sort of formative aspects of how we're tracking your progress or your learnings and so forth, and your development. There are this kind of hurdle activities, which I'll talk about in a tick, that give us a kind of formal benchmark about how we think you're going in terms of these states. And we're really interested to have this conversation too, particularly in relation to the landmarks for learning, so the identified competencies or practice standards. How you think that's gone. Just putting it out there. Don't have to talk about it this week, but it would be good to talk about it next week so that we can have a good, solid look at what we do in CS3, for example, because every training is evolving. Okay, so that's the roadmap. That's the overall roadmap for where you are at halfway through your 3rd year. So some pragmatics for this segment. We'll have a couple of presentations, and someone's got a presentation ready to go. Who did you tell me? Doris and Mia. When would you like to do that, Doris and Mia? Yeah, it's now. You mean you haven't got it ready?
No time like the present, Doris.
Sorry? When would you like to do it? It's up to you guys. This week? Wednesday? All right, we can tic-tac about the timing of it. So that's... Who else? Anna. Anna, who's your buddy? Oh. All right.
Do I have to do it again?
No, we'll figure it out. And then who else? So, Nina?
I found some more stuff.
Okay.
I found some more stuff.
Okay. Right, we'll tick. There's probably more. All right, we'll keep. Oh my gosh. All right, I won't pull your names up. Yep. Okay. Well, how about at the end of the day, whoever needs to do a presentation comes and has a chat, and we'll just schedule you in, because maybe it won't be everybody this segment. Yeah. Okay, so that's that. But we'll just do that first one Wednesday. That's me and Doris, then everybody else. Blah, blah, blah. So there'll be a warm-up FI practicum, which Jenny's alluded to in the email, next Tuesday. So have a think about who you can invite that you know here that would like to come for a free FI, unless you want to secretly get them to pay. It's free. So it'll be 9:30 and 11:30. So this is an opportunity, and I'll talk more about this towards the end of the week, but this is the opportunity to practice in a formal setting working with somebody who's not of the tribe. So there might be supportive followers of the tribe, like groupies, but they're not well, they could be practitioners as well. We can, if we need to, we can have practitioners coming in, but they're not somebody in this particular tribe, so that you get to practice. Now, this is practice. It's not an exam, it's not a test, it's practice. With support, the support of your colleagues, the support of us. So we're here to offer that supportive environment. And I think this is probably something, we've tried some various things in the past about how we build up this supportive environment. You've experienced the same kind of process with your ATM practicums. So have a think about what worked for you in the lead up to the ATM practicums, and we can recapitulate that process. That's our intention. What you think worked in the ATM practicums, what didn't, what helped you, what supported you, and that will be next Tuesday. So we'll talk more about the specifics of that. But basically, we'll have half of you giving an FI to your person at 9:30 and the other half at 11:30. So it's, part of this is sort of the discipline of time management. And Ruth and myself and Jenny will watch however many of you are allocated. I can't do the math. A couple each, and there'll be the feedback thing. So, and you can have a sort of a buddy there who's helping you, wiping the sweat off your brow and mopping up and, tucking your hair and making sure that, everything's tidy and bringing you water and, that whatever of those sorts of processes that you think can support you, we can discuss towards the end of the week. Okay? So that's that. Yeah. Real life, in short, in real life. So you can, in your own secret mind, have a little lesson prepared and adapt it for that person. If that's a strategy that would help you, you can just be open and make it up as you go along, like in real life. So these are some of the tactics that you could take into it. Yeah. 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 The main thing is you're not an island. You don't have to swim on your own, so to speak. And we can go through. We'll be going through the overall structure of a lesson again to refresh this week. So some of the other things we'll be doing. So that's Tuesday next week. I'll come back to that question because I think we've got some answers to it. The other thing that we're starting this segment is that we were encouraging you, if you feel ready for it, that, and this is something that we've picked up from. You haven't met Alan and Larry. So this is something that's not guinea pig stuff, and it works. I think it works very well when you're ready to do it. Is when you have your FI with staff, actually can make it into a tutorial now, because essentially, we've thought a lot, and this is not our original thinking. The FI experience with us, if you think about it in this context, is a closer learning environment between two people, right? So if in this context, for your training program FI, you want it to be a tutorial where actually it's more exchanging, so you get to actually interact with us more and practice stuff on us, like physically on us. So, there's things that might be, that you really, you're concerned about. Like when you've done all the stuff, that segment with Jeff Haller about self-organising and pushing through the foot. And, sometimes I feel like I get it, sometimes I don't, but I'm not sure, blah, blah, blah. You can actually say, look, I want to try that on you. So you've got a lesson with me. Instead of me working on you, you come with your questions and with what you want to practice, and you practice it on me, and then I can give you feedback about your touch, communication, whatever. You can practice the interview, you can practice the end of the lesson, you can practice any tactics in between, and get that more immediate one-to-one feedback. So it is an FI, but kind of slightly reversed. Does that make sense? So the feedback about that has always been it's really, really good. And Phil, since Adelaide. Yeah. So that's not but of course you don't have to do it. If you want a lesson, you can have a lesson, but that's now the option. So that's that. So just let us know. Having said that, what is also really interesting for you to see at this time is not just see, because you've been seeing us doing FIs and not necessarily knowing what's going on in our head, but we'll do a bit of stream of consciousness. So it's like we'll open the lid, and as we're giving an FI, we'll talk about what we are thinking and what we're seeing, and you'll get an insight into what our decision-making processes are along the course of an FI. So we'll talk more about that later, because Jenny's presented me with an alternate model for that, and I'm feeling a little bit, I need to think about that. Anyway, so that will happen, and we'll start doing that tomorrow. So Jenny will liaise with people, and Ruth and myself and Jenny will do that in class. So some of you will volunteer to have your class FI in the class. So it's a voluntary thing, obviously, because we're going to be talking about you, and it'll be with you. You're there, but you are the subject of interest, and with people watching in 3 groups, so it's not quite so intimidating. You won't have all of these sets of eyes on you. You have a third. Okay, so that's. Yep. So that's that, and we won't talk about that. I'll just mention it as part of this reflecting on the FI process and giving you another window about the FI process. Your homework after this segment, one of your online activities will be that you video yourself giving an FI. Yep. And then you'll meet with one of us individually, probably Zoom meeting and with a shared screen, and you'll have that one-to-one chat about then you get to describe what your process was in the lesson and get our feedback from watching it and hearing it. So there's 3 ways that you'll have the lid lifted off the FI process, if that helps. If that helps. It will help, guaranteed. Okay? It's getting quite meaty, isn't it? Sorry? Meaty. Yeah.
That is another process that has been in this program for the past several students who have that opportunity through a video, sit with someone and talk about what they thought, what they did, what they thought.
Yep. And on that, so not all of you, we've got maybe a dozen or more of the recorded ATMs that you've taught. I confess, the person who hasn't done my allocation, but I'm getting there, so you'll get feedback about that. But essentially, we thought it was a really useful process. For those of you who did it, and the individual feedback. And actually, we think there's probably another iterative thing about that is about you listening to it again. Because it was 6 months ago that you did that. Do you remember? a long time ago. So that's so this is now the sort of the FI version of that. Obviously, it has to be videoed. So on that, Zoran will write a guideline for how to video, because otherwise, you know, there'll be a lot of cameras aiming at the ceiling. And Jenny's just reminded me that if that videoing is difficult for you, actually, you could do it here. You could take the opportunity to do it in the next 2 weeks in a break, if you don't want to do the handheld thing.
Most digital SLR cameras now have really good video.
Most digital SLR cameras have really good video. I'm just repeating it for the thing. Yeah.
So like most the sort of the digital SLR ones.
Yeah.
Great video on them now.
Yeah. A GoPro. Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. Yeah, you could get a buddy to. Well, I mean, we won't go into the details because Zoran will go through the guidelines for you. But yeah. Yeah. So now that's an awful lot of overview of stuff that's coming ahead of you. What is going to happen, let's just come to this week, is that, it's as I think I mentioned, it's a really structured first week. Oh yes, question? Box?
Box, please.
Oh, sorry.
Philippa.
This is a question I've been meaning to ask for about 3 years. You know, there's the wonderful online resources that we have. How long will they remain online for us?
A long time.
All right. So they won't just be cut off. We won't be cut off at the knees.
No, you will have noticed that the Brisbane 3 icon is still there.
Yeah.
You know, they graduated.
Oh, right. Okay.
No, maybe not 6 years. As long as I'm able to sustain the technology, and if it looks like they're going to disappear, I'll let you know and we'll try and figure out a way of checking whether you still want them.
That's great.
Good. Yep. I mean, because in terms of this practice, I mean, they're invaluable to go back to and look, examine what it is you're doing, or to construct an ATM. Yeah.
Yep, that's right. Yep, exactly. Okay. Yeah. Okay. All right. So in terms of this week, there is an ATM series that we'll do. There's 5 in the series of ATMs, and they're the over the table ATM series, and it comes originally from Jerry Carson, who is was sort of the cameraman, right hand man of Moshe, and Jerry's still around. I was going to say something, but don't go there. And they're a great ATM series, and I'm happy to. And they're actually available as CDs as well. So you can acquire those, but we'll do the lessons pretty exactly in the lesson. So we'll do one each day, and then each day there's such clear ATMs that they really. And I know we're flogging this like crazy, but it's really obvious what you can pull out of those ATMs for FI. So each day we'll do the ATM, each day we'll do another piece of an FI, so that you end up with a full FI template, if you like, at the end of the week. Now, I wouldn't use this one for your necessarily for your public. If you knew them well, you could, but you'll see why it's probably not a lesson that you would give to someone that you'd only just first met. So this is, we're starting to think about decision making again. Why would I not choose to do this lesson on a first meeting? Maybe. There's no definites, but maybe. So that's this week. So we have that. Ruth's got a lovely series to teach. There will be a nice kind of counterbalance to the ATMs, because the ATMs are pretty, they're in one position, and it's an unusual position. So that will be a nice relief. Jenny's got some work around putting more detail into this, the sort of learning objectives, and how that might manifest in terms of your feeling of competence and confidence, and breaking that down into little bits so you can start thinking about, where do you feel confident, where do you feel competent, where do you feel both, where do you feel neither, ready to go into next week, so that you have some identification of what you'd like to work on. So that will happen. What else have we got for you? There's a few. This is the opportunity, like as yesterday we went through, what our aspirations for this program were and whether we felt we've met them. So we want to actually float that out there and see where are you having some gaps. So something else to think about, we might do this tomorrow, is about, or maybe this afternoon, depending on time, and having a think about in terms of your, we talked about self-image, but one of the aspects of self-image that we're working on here is your embodied anatomy. So how clear do you, now you might feel physically clear that, my own 2 feet are clear to me in terms of their functionality and what they, their agency and stuff, but I'm actually still really unclear about what all those 26 bones do or something. Or you've come up in your ATM that there's an aspect of that kind of applied anatomy or biomechanics that you're just still really hazy about. So we'll have a little process about identifying what they are, and then we can put in some sessions specifically and or give you online work to help literally flesh out that embodied anatomy aspect. Yeah, we've picked up that that this is an ongoing source of anxiety for people, that they feel like they don't really know what's under the bonnet sometimes. So we want to know which parts of the car is it that's unclear, and it might be different for everybody. In which case, we'll do some more generic processes about how do you acquire some satisfactory level of knowledge around anatomy. But if there's some commonalities, we can do it in class. Let me just walk over here. See what else. So today I'm really interested to hear how you went on with that decision-making observation thing that you've just done for the last couple of weeks, whether you did it or not. I'm just giving you a notice, fake it. We're going to do it after lunch, talk about that. And what kind of insights you had about when you started actually noticing how you do or don't make decisions, and how that changes according to context, and are you picking up certain patterns. And that's about it, I think. And I think you can see why I've picked up the decision-making stuff, because reading some of the things that you identified with Zoran in July about your sources of inquiry in FI, a lot of it is, how do I know what to do next? Maybe that's me being simplistic, but it seemed to me that some of the anxieties, well, how do you know to do this next? How do you make that decision, in other words? Like, what position to put somebody in? Where do I go next? Why did you go to the pelvis and not the shoulder? And, how do you make those decisions? So we will think about what are the factors that lead you to make a decision. And that is about it for this week. Next week, not telling. Magical mystery tour. I actually do know what it is. It's not that I don't know. All right, any questions? Any other comments? Thank you. All right. You want to do an ATM? No, you just stop. Okay, so you're all nicely got your mats out. You need to now go. You got a question? You're on the toilet? Yeah, you go to the toilet. And you need to get the tables out. So get the tables out. And there needs to, it's depending on how many tables you can have, and then you get into pairs. You can be on the carpet.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, that works, doesn't it?